Alright guys, today I'm going to show you for leftover makeover how to make a shepherd's pie. So, you like mashed potatoes, love them even, but you have so much you don't know what to do with. Shepherd's pie is your go-to for that. It is hearty, comforting, especially on these really surprisingly chilly, rainy spring days. Nothing quite hits as good as a shepherd's pie. So for my shepherd's pie, I like to use a mixture of green lentils and TVP. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cook our green lentils. I'm going to cook mine in the rice cooker. I'm going to show you guys how I do that. So first I measured out my lentils. I'm using green lentils here. You could also use brown lentils for this. They have a really good texture. They hold up pretty well. So I measured out that I have 1.5 cups of lentils, and now I'm going to rinse them really well. Then I'm going to add that directly to my rice cooker, and I'm going to add 3 cups of water and a good amount of salt. You can also cook these in broth if you'd like, but I'm going to be putting them in shepherd's pie, so they're going to be plenty flavorful. And then we are going to cook these on the brown rice setting. These are the mashed potatoes I'm going to be using. I would recommend getting them warm because it will make them easier to spread over the shepherd's pie. I'm using my garlic herbed mashed potatoes. If you guys want to see a recipe for how to do that, let me know. But I'm pretty sure most people make really good mashed potatoes already. But yeah, if you want to see my vegan garlic and herb mashed potatoes recipe, leave a comment. So now we're going to work on making our filling. First, we're going to make our TVP. So you can rehydrate this in water and then drain out the liquid, whatever. That's not how I generally cook TVP. What I do is I add a broth and let it cook down until most of the moisture has evaporated. The broth I'm going to be using is the vegan Better Than Bouillon no beef base. So for 1 cup of dried TVP, I'm using 2 cups of water and 2 teaspoons of the beef bouillon. You can just use veggie broth if you don't have this, or if you have another kind of vegan bouillon you want. I basically have this in a pan. I just turned it on high, and I'm going to keep mixing this bouillon around until it disintegrates in the water. I'm just going to let this cook and do its thing. Alright, and then once all of the visible liquid has evaporated, I'm just going to keep cooking this for a little bit more until I feel like most of that weird flavor that you get from TVP or soy curls or stuff like that has been evaporated out. This is my favorite way to get rid of that flavor. And it doesn't take, it's a lot more hands-off than like squeezing out the liquid. You just want to make sure that it doesn't burn, so keep an eye on it. Alright, I went ahead and turned off the heat, and I'm just going to let the residual heat finish evaporating everything and just keep stirring it. And then we're going to transfer this to a separate bowl, and then we're going to start working on our filling. Alright, TVP has been removed. There will be some residual TVP in here, and then like some frond, some flavor. That's totally fine. We're going to add a little bit of oil. I'm just using some good old avocado oil or olive oil. Either one of those is fine. Probably like a teaspoon. We don't need a lot. And then I am adding in about 1 cup of onion. I do all of my onion, carrot, celery prep, and then I just freeze it, so it's super convenient to measure out like this. And I'm going to turn back on the heat to a medium-low. We're just going to cook these onions for a little bit here. I'm not going to add any more fat yet, though. So if it starts sticking, we're going to add some water or veggie broth or beef broth, whatever you want to season this with. Alright, once they become translucent, I'm going to add a heaped cup of my diced up carrots. You want all of the veggies to be similarly cut to size. Then also 1 cup of celery. We're just going to let that cook for a little bit, get to know each other. All right, these are looking pretty good. We're gonna go ahead and add more ingredients here. So I've got 2 tablespoons of garlic that I've pureed in the food processor and 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. These are just frozen cubes that I've done if like I do with my vegetables. If you guys want to see a video about how I do my freezer prep, just let me know. And you can deglaze this pan as you need to, just with some water or veggie broth. So in this mason jar here, I have 2 teaspoons of the Better Than Bouillon beef, and I'm going to pour 2 cups of hot boiling water from my kettle in here and mix it up and then pour that in. That's going to be my broth. I just need to get that ready so that when I put the spices in and stuff, I can just keep adding and start making my roux. And then I'm going to pour some hot water in here and try to get the rest of this out. We want 4 cups of broth total set aside and ready to go. So if this keeps getting dry and you keep getting all this from, just keep deglazing with water. Alright, so we've got our 2 tablespoons of garlic minced up and our 2 tablespoons of tomato paste minced up. I also have a teaspoon of oregano, dried oregano, a teaspoon of dried thyme, a teaspoon of dried rosemary, crushed rosemary, and a teaspoon of dried marjoram. We have a teaspoon of garlic powder, a teaspoon of onion powder, a half teaspoon of ground white pepper, and a half teaspoon of ground black pepper. And that's all going to go right in here because this is going to be our flavor. And we are going to add salt, but I'm not too pressed about adding salt right away. We're just going to let this toast in the middle for a minute, and then we're going to mix it all together with the vegetables. And I went ahead and added some more water. Steam a clock over here to deglaze the pan more. We're going to mix that all up in there. Now you don't have to put as much pepper as I did. I really like a good amount of pepper in here. And technically the rosemary and thyme aren't necessary. But my mashed potatoes are a garlic and herb mashed potatoes, and the herbs in it are thyme and rosemary, so it will pair really well with my mashed potatoes. So this is what we want. We want to have like it's looking like it's like sticking to the vegetables really good. That's perfect, exactly what we want. Now we are going to make a spot in the middle. We're going to add 2 tablespoons of vegan butter. I'm using the Country Crock avocado oil. The olive oil would work too. This is just what I have. And we are going to let this butter melt here in this middle. And then we're going to add our flour and we're going to start making the roux. Alright, our butter is looking nice and melted. I'm going to add, goodness, so steamy, 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour. And we are going to cook that in with the butter. Really cook that flour. And we're going to mix it all together here and get it well incorporated. And then we're going to start adding in our broth. If the pan needs deglazed again, at this point, yes, there we go. I'm actually going to add a couple of tablespoons of white wine. You don't have to do this. I just so happen to have some white wine, or red wine would work too. But it's really going to elevate this flavor and add some really good notes into this. It's about a tablespoon. And we're going to mix that in. It smells so amazing in here right now. You guys don't even know. I hope you give this a try because it is delightful. Okay, so now we're going to start adding in our broth. So we're going to add in the 2 cups of broth first. It will be hot, so be careful. Do not burn yourself. We're going to mix that up and let it thicken. And then we're going to add another cup and then another cup. We want this to be thick, but also nice and velvety and luxurious. So you only want to add a few cups, like a cup at a time, 2 cups at the max. Don't add it all at once, and can kind of stir it together. You can see how it's already starting to thicken. That's perfect. All right, see that nice silky texture? That's beautiful. All right, we're gonna add in another cup of broth. And as you can see, it's a lot thinner now. We're gonna let it thicken up again and then add our last cup of broth. If you do need more broth than that, you can add more. The longer you let it cook, the thicker it gets. We're just basically getting this ready so that we can incorporate back in our proteins. And as you can see, it's got that glossy, thick, bubbly look again. So we're gonna add in our last cup of broth. So at this point, I would taste it and see how salty it is because we didn't add any salt yet. And it definitely needs some salt. I'm gonna add a teaspoon about. All right, let's try it again. Much better. Now, I have a couple of other ingredients. These are optional, but recommended to take this up to the next level. So I have some vegan Worcestershire sauce, liquid aminos, and liquid smoke. Adding these will increase that rich, almost beefy quality that we're looking for in the shepherd's pie. So I'm gonna add a half a teaspoon of liquid smoke and a teaspoon of liquid aminos and a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce. Now we're gonna turn this heat down to low, and my lentils are almost done cooking, and as soon as they're done cooking, then we're gonna add in our TVP and our lentils to this mixture. And I have one more vegetable to add. Even though it's technically not a vegetable, it's technically a legume. And this may seem very heavily seasoned if you taste it. That's what you want, because the TVP and the lentils on their own don't have very much flavor. Like, yes, I cooked the TVP in the beef broth, but it evaporated, and I don't have any other seasonings on it other than that. And then the lentils are cooking in salted water, but that's it. So you're gonna want that many seasonings to make this really flavorful after you incorporate those in here. In the meantime, we are gonna preheat our oven to 425. And as I told you guys, we're going to be adding one more thing. We're going to add a cup of green peas. I love peas, so I might add a little bit more than a cup. And we're just going to mix that into it. I didn't cook the peas as long because I like having those little pops of peas in there. The other vegetables, I wanted them to be really soft and buttery and almost melt into it. But I like to have the peas more intact. All right, our lentils are done. If there is any extra liquid in here, you're gonna wanna drain that off. And mine cooked perfectly, so I didn't have any extra liquid. I just dumped them right in to this mixture, mix it around, get it well incorporated in there. We're almost done, guys. This is a really fiber-packed, high-protein meal. Now we're going to add in the last ingredient, our TVP. Now you could, like I said, you could just skip the TVP. You could just make this with just the lentils and it would be fine, but I want that extra protein in here, and TVP is packed with it. Mix that all well until it's combined. Now at this point, everything in here is cooked, so you can go ahead and taste it and see if it needs any more seasoning. It is perfect, guys. Perfect. Honestly, perfect amount of pepper, perfect amount of salt, good amount of seasonings. I think we're ready. So you're gonna want a nice sized casserole dish for this. So we're gonna pour all of that filling into this casserole dish. No need to grease it or anything. If you want to, you can, but like I said, it's not necessary. And then we're gonna smooth this out. Make sure there's enough room for our potatoes. Make a nice even layer. Now, time for the topping. So like I said, you want your potatoes to be warm. It'll make it easier to spread. And we're just gonna take some and plop it on top. I'm not quite sure how much mashed potatoes this is. I don't know. I'd say at least 4 cups of mashed potatoes. All right, now we're gonna try our best to smooth this out. I like to use a fork to help me do this and really try to cover the whole thing. Kind of scrape some off the top and fill in all those gaps on the side. And then using that fork, we're going to kind of make lines across this. Doing this really makes some crispy texture when you bake the shepherd's pie. And then I'll kind of like do a little cross hatching for even more delicious crispiness. All right, and there she is, and she is ready to bake. And everything, like I said, is already cooked. So we're just gonna bake this uncovered. Like I said, 425. We're gonna cook it for about 20 minutes, and then we'll check on it. It can go anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes to cook this. Goodbye, pie. And 20 minutes. All right, so the 20 minutes are up. Ooh, and that's what it's looking like. Cooking up nicely. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to turn it on to broil, because you can see that it's already bubbling, and that's perfect. So I'm gonna turn it on to broil for just a couple minutes to brown up that top. And look at it. It is a bubbly. You got some crisp up on those potatoes. Oh my goodness. It started seeping out the sides. So maybe put a cookie sheet underneath or get a slightly bigger casserole dish. This was the biggest one I had, so. Doesn't that just look divine? We're gonna let this cool for a minute, and then I will scoop it out so you can see what it looks like. All right, guys, it's time to scoop into this bad boy. Oh, just look at that. Look at that. Now that is a shepherd's pie, guys. I hope you guys make this. It is a nice, hearty, easy way to use up your leftover mashed potatoes. Enjoy.